Hi, welcome to AI Practical Applications. I'm Jack Dowling. I'm the CEO of Odom Technology Group. Today's session will be an interview with Rameswhar Balanagu. The session will last probably an hour or more, a little bit more. And uh, Rameshwar is the Senior Director, Chief Enterprise Architect at UNFI, which is the largest publicly traded wholesale distributor of healthier foods in the U.S. and Canada. Prior to UNFI, Rameshwar was initially the senior manager of enterprise architecture, and then was promoted to head of architecture at Avaya, where he served for 10 years. He also served for 9 years at NCH as a solution architect, and he was a senior consultant at Sierra Atlantic for 5 years before that, and had a couple of software engineering jobs prior to that. He's currently a member of the Forbes Technology Council. I'm really excited to do this interview today because enterprise architects play a crucial role in large organizations, primarily focusing on aligning the company's business and technology objectives, strategies to support long-term objectives. They're typically responsible for, when you look at how you lay this stuff out, the first thing you have to do is put together a strategy plan. And that strategy plan identifies the things that can help your company win in the marketplace. And then you identify what are the technology capabilities you have to have in order to create those capabilities. You do an assessment of where you are today with your technology capabilities, and you do a gap analysis between where you are and where you need to be. Then you put together a technology roadmap. And so enterprise architects typically do that work. They do the strategy plan, they do the technology roadmap, they lay out the governance standards, they do technology evaluation, architecture design, risk management, cost management, collaboration, change management, vendor management, data management, innovation, cybersecurity, performance optimization, compliance and regulations, and mergers and acquisitions. Enterprise architect is obviously a multifaceted role, and it requires a deep understanding of technology and business. And chief architects, they act as a bridge between the business units and IT, ensuring that the technology spending supports the strategic business objectives. It's a very different role than anyone else that I've interviewed so far, and it's critical to the success of AI in large organizations. Rameshwar is a very sharp chief enterprise architect, as you will soon see. Today, we'll be talking about AI in general, but specifically generative AI. Rameshwar will help us understand how large organizations approach innovation and emerging technology specifically. So, Rameshwar, welcome to our podcast today. Sure appreciate you making time for us.
Thanks, Jack. It's always been a pleasure talking to you anytime.
Well, I thought, we'd dive right in today. We've kind of done an intro up front, so I was thinking we'd dive right into the questions. And so the first question I'd like to ask is, how can generative AI support a community's overall business objectives and strategies?
So I've had a meeting today also. Now, when people talk of AI, there is generative AI and not so cool fancy AI, which is the normal AI or statistics of machine learning. So when people say AI, I just want to make sure which AI are we talking. Traditionally, we don't want to go back to the history, but what we are seeing right now is people call it VUCA: volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. There is external factors, things like COVID, things like supply chain logistics, things like inflation crisis, and there's a recession looming at large. That is what strategy to have another VUCA, which is called vision, understanding, clarity, and agility. So moving from this VUCA to that VUCA needs strategy. AI can, if you do take AI, and if you see AI is nothing but probability in its core of it, is when you take this VUCA, the V to the V, what is the probability of moving from volatility to vision? what is the probability of uncertainty to understanding? What is the probability? So this is where AI can help you, but the core of it is using data. So if you use data and AI properly, you can actually drive your strategy VUCA to VUCA.
Cool. Well, what specific outcomes or improvements should you be seeking with generative AI?
Actually, generative AI is a young kid on the block. It's as we speak in another month. Happy birthday, generative AI.
Yeah.
So honestly, outcome driven. If you talk from generative AI, we are at least 2 to 3 years away. But I can tell you, hopefully, where it is. Increase productivity for developers, productivity for business, productivity for sales. And then when you talk of an outcome based, increase in productivity of a developer, what does it mean? Does it increase his productivity from, say, let's say he takes 40 hours to 20 hours, which means you're turning out the code faster. You're getting products faster to the market, making the customer better. So that's what an outcome has to be. But then this outcome, because the product has been delivered faster, there is even to this day looming debt or a question is, if you have used AI, who claims the right to it? So if I've used AI, there's a lot of hallucination. There are people saying is, if you used AI for your hallucination, you can't claim a right on it. So if I've built a product that makes your life and my life better, and we've used AI, especially generative AI, and because generative AI has basic knowledge, what we call as foundational model on which we fine tune. So who lays claim on it? How can the company say this is my idea? The reality was it was trained. See, this is the difference that we have to understand the outcome within an AI. When we use the traditional AI, it was my data. Like when we do this example of time series, I know the seasonality of when I will go up, when I'll go down, because in summer I will always wear the casual wear, but in winter I go into extreme this one. It is based on my data. But then if I use generative AI and if it hallucinates me, which is good and drives my sale, I don't know. That could be a subject of, because that brainchild came from you, not from me, which means I have subtly stolen your idea to drive my sales. So now, isn't this a classic example of patent infringement? I don't know. We don't have many answers, and I've been with many startups. I will sadly say that the analysts and the Anderson Horowitz and whatnot, multi-trillion-dollar market for Bitcoin, multi-trillion-dollar for blockchain, multi-trillion-dollar for metaverse. We are in the next wave of AI boom, and generative AI will calm down in the next 2 to 3 years until we understand the guardrails. So I would say outcome of AI is there, which we are already seeing. When we talk, it's a business experience, improving top line, reducing bottom line, giving new business models. But when you club it with generative AI, it is beyond your data. So the legal can come in, the risk management from coming. So I really don't know how we can claim the outcome of a generative AI is mine or yours or beyond us.
Yeah, it's going to be really tricky. There's a lot of tricky stuff right now that I think, attorneys and business executives are facing related to ownership and
Exactly.
originality. Where did it come from? So, you were talking about data just then. How do you ensure that they have access to the necessary data to train and deploy these generative AI models?
I'll just take a leaf of some of the experts. And by the way, nowadays, everybody is an expert on generative AI. Everybody reads something else and says that. The standard tenets of guardrail, which is traceability, explainability, risk, people are talking about it, but we don't know. Just today, there was an article of hallucinations in generative AI are actually good because it creates new things. But I just have a question that begets us, what's the difference between a schizophrenic person and a hallucination? Don't we take that person to a doctor? So, we say that, so there is a thin line between sanity and insanity. So the insanity is what hallucination is, and if it extends beyond hallucination, it becomes schizophrenic. So my fear is, would schizophrenia become the normality? I don't know. So we don't have answers. All I can say is the experts are trying to figure out, use guardrails. When they mean guardrails, expand it to your stakeholders. And there was a beautiful video done by Michael Krigsman with one of the faculty dean with Harvard or something. He said you could use generative AI internally with your employees or externally. But the problem with external is you are subject to massive lawsuits, massive fraud. Use it cautiously. Make sure your CISO and your stakeholders are involved. Get your data teams. I'll tell you simple thing, Jack. I've been a chief architect for a lot of times, and three simple questions: how many applications does your business run? Everybody will give a different answer. Forget it.
Oh, yeah.
How much of data you have? 100 TB, 200 TB, 300 TB. Do you know how much of it is dark data? And the moment when you ask this third question, 95% of them will go bleep. So, get to the reality that generative AI is awesome. There is hallucination. But if you don't understand what dark data is, you are now opening your landmine to somebody else. Remember, generative AI was scraped on you, me, without even asking us. Look at the lawsuits that are coming out. It is just the epiphany moment on hallucination, but it's the epiphany moment for legal as well. They have scraped you and me without asking us. And that is, it could be a breakout die movement also. So again, architect, we don't have, when we as Jack, you've been a CIO in the past, when you adopt a new technology, before you adopt, the first thing you ask is, give me a referenceable customer or give me a reference architecture. Why do we do that? Because we draw the guardrails for it. In the case of generative AI, we are all having an epiphany moment, but we don't have a sizable reference architecture. You can say, there are startups, they're $1 trillion market, whatnot. How does this new toy fit into my organization without having reference architecture? And hence, I proposed one of the day, my team member asked us, let's put it in DMZ, let it not be exposed to an internal data, we will only expose APIs. But then there is another company that said, let's put a separate environment, we'll push the data to it, and then let's explore. So everybody is exploring it in a very different way. Yeah. So we are in the hype cycle, the first hype cycle. A year from now, we may not even be talking of generative AI. We'll call it as normal AI, where we will know what it is. But it is definitely needing an attention from all the CXOs. Would we lose out on this plan? Of the way the world is. But what I would say is, take a deep breath, let the hallucinations occur, insanity will settle down and sanity will settle. Keep experimenting it. This is where, when I think I spoke to you, Jack, last time, is companies need to move from a bimodal architecture to a trimodal architecture. You cannot stop what you're doing. You've already budgeted for this year on what you can do. I would recommend, if there are innovation budgets, utilize that to do that. And then when you're ready next year, move from a bimodal to a trimodal architecture where you have systems of intelligence which have a lot of guardrails and governance built into that.
You got it. I have a lot of feeds, coming from Twitter and other places on AI, and I've been shocked at the pace of new applications for generative AI. How can you ensure within a big company where people could get access to these models, download them, and start to use them? How do you ensure the quality and privacy of the data that people in your company are using?
If you leave the generative AI hype, if you talk the standard models, the models, basically what we have is a model governance in terms of the drift, security, the data that's coming. So those and then there is again the DevOps side of it. What you still need to do is adopt the DevOps model plus the MLOps model and actually see, how do we deploy, but then how do we keep monitoring it from a drift perspective, from a bias perspective, and from a security. So this is where enterprise architecture again comes into picture, where you kind of box it out. And you can, there are open source models like Huggins is there, whatnot. And then there are the proprietary models, which are very powerful. It is up to the company's appetite if they want to be into the proprietary models or an open source model. But again, like I said, put up a sandbox environment like a DMZ or somewhere and have your standard MLOps and then take it from there, celebrate the success, obviously, but then you kind of constantly keep looking into it. The challenges inherently with the standard model. See, when we talk of generative AI, we are talking at billions of parameters at scale. We never had this kind of a thing. In fact, just last week, ChatGPT just came out with a multi-sensory model touch. You can hear, listen, whatnot, which means the number of parameters that they're training are higher, which is great. But what companies need to understand is, do we need billions of parameters? Perhaps we can take a smaller model of the fine-tuned model and actually use it for us. Because when you take the concept of zero shot versus few shots, no matter what, especially when it comes to enterprise data, it is not ready, the foundation model built for you. So what you really have to understand is take a language model, which is for an enterprise, perhaps an open source, go through the guardrails, and then adapt to it. If you're a company like Google, Uber, Netflix, that's a different scale. But if you're regular companies, you may not need the generative AI models. You can use the smaller versions of generative AI models that are more enterprise ready. But again, like I said, you go crawl, walk, run, fly. Right now, all the companies are in a crawl mode. Maybe next year there'll be in a walk. A run and a fly, honestly, generative AI cannot be in a run and a fly. And I will say that why. After some point, generative AI has to meet normal AI. Take an example, we are getting winter. Winter, they say the polar vortex is coming. Now, what if you see that, what can generative AI tell? Based on the weather, we recommend you to buy thick shirts, whatnot. But what generative AI cannot do is, where is the temperature going up and down? For that, it needs another model and it needs data. So those other models will have to adapt and integrate with generative AI. Enterprises have to think holistically from an AI, not just generative AI. End to end, unless you have this, your use cases will again be limited. Your success will be limited. It is the same thing, I'm sorry to say. Some automation tools which got hype, they were craving for existence. And then they married with something, and then they married with something. Everybody only talks of generative AI because that is the buzzword. What you have to, and this is again what I say, Jack, is you need a trimodal strategy, which is systems of record, systems of engagement, systems of engineering. If you have generative AI, let's say you threw it around customer and you threw it a service, but after that, what? If you want to understand why a customer is having a problem with servicing his car, it could be that when the car came to a showroom, the application didn't register the tire properly. And the tire was not mounted properly. It didn't have air, or the chassis alignment wasn't there. These kind of things go into multiple systems. So until these federation of systems converge with a model and says, because of these problems these all had, generative AI will not be able to truly say, all generative AI can converse is, oh, you had a problem, I'm sorry, I'll do this. But then generative AI really gets a meaningful context as when it gets into the system, into the data, and then it says, you got a problem because the tire last time was not aligned properly. or the air wasn't pumped. Then generative AI can actually take a clue from predictive AI, which is not a predictive AI, can saying, we are sorry, we will offer you something like a recommendation because you came. I'll give you a free chocolate. I'm just telling. So this is where I'm saying is generative AI by itself will have a winter if it is not adapting to the enterprise. At some point, it has to adapt to the enterprise.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. So which of the areas of the organization do you think can benefit most from generative AI?
I think entire enterprise, honestly. Everybody will expand. They're the both sides, but technically, if you see the experience could be immensely employee experience, customer experience, vendor experience, security team could be, there's not an area, developers could be, basically even the networking could be there. But immediate impact, if you really ask me, would be the customer experience. That is where the immediate impact could be felt at.
Yeah, I agree with that. And should AI be used for internal processes as well as customer facing applications? Then you definitely are kind of saying, yeah, this is going to be good for your customers as well.
I don't know if you have heard, and I'm sure you've heard of the digital twin of an enterprise. So as an enterprise architect, if I really see what are the top 5 questions, application portfolio management, meaning how many apps are there, which applications support which business capability, which data center I'm in, what happens if do I have a DR playbook, what happens if I knock down an application, which business capability is impacted and how much line of business is impacted. So these are very simple questions. And then if I knock off this application, let's say I want to go from SAP 6 to SAP HANA, what are all the systems impacted? That kind of a lineage, if I use generative AI, I can make wonders of it, because you don't have to be an enterprise architect. You can say, hey, Ramesh, hey, Mr., or we can say, hey, Mr. AI, just tell me what is the impact of downing a system. Immediately, it can come back and say, it is mission XYZ, it is this, it knocks me off. Your potential revenue loss is 6.4. And it can actually tell me by knocking off this app and moving to the cloud, you could save this. So suddenly all of this, what happens is it could be a virtual assistant to a CIO or a CXO immediately. So the potentials are unlimited. Again, that will be done only when you can connect all the systems of record to the systems of engagement. So that is why it is important that you move forward, but then don't stop your projects and just jump the ship to the generative AI, because then you will lose credibility and visibility. I'll give you 2 examples. Last week I was at an Infotech conference, Jack. Do you know the MGM slot machines were down?
Really?
Yes. And that is because smart Gen Z kids called the customer support. They didn't use generative AI. I was actually searching, and what they said, we're an executive, and can you reset the passwords? They were somehow found it. And these guys, obviously, these people, not guys, small, they get riled and they get scared. When an executive calls, without thinking twice, they reset the password, and then they sneaked in. All the slots were down. Now, they didn't use generative AI. This is just going to open a Pandora's box. Then this week or last week, city of Dallas got hacked. Every year they get it. Now, what is going to happen is, with generative AI, the cyber hacks will be, the phishing will be so sophisticated that you and I, if there's a mail sent on behalf of you, you will think, it's genuine. And the hallucination can occur to such a level. Data poisoning can occur, model poisoning can occur. You won't even know. So you got to think of all of this. And right now, cybersecurity, which we call as the concept of zero trust architecture, is not ready. There's a lot of hype. Year 1, Happy New Year. Year 2, we will be in a position to understand with the explainability and whatnot.
Yeah, you bet. So, how do organizations lock down a budget for implementing and maintaining something like generative AI? I mean, how do they do it?
I don't think there should be a separate budget for it. If you think from a CXO's perspective, it's all innovation.
Yeah.
But remember, a CXO has three streams: support the business initiatives. The second thing is keep the lights on. And the third thing where he has to cut out is innovation. If you're calling generative AI as a cool, fancy toy, quantum is coming. Quantum and AI can take it to the next level. There is space technology, we're also obsessed with it, but there's a lot of interesting stuff occurring in space. Who knows? We might be, some of our companies or some of our stuff might be looking into space as well. So generative, and then you have AI, which still is evolving. Yes, it has accelerated. So really, it is not keeping a separate budget, because again, it should have relevance to outcomes, strategic initiatives. How do you translate this fancy project back into your business transformation or digital transformation? Say, for example, how this could impact. Remember, we talked of VUCA to VUCA. Next time, we have a what you call a multidimensional problem, which is, I hope not, a pandemic. Who knows? Supply chain shortage. Supply chain can be very funny. Last year the Panama Canal, the what was that canal that got blocked by that evergreen ship? Panama Canal, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. This time I had read that the water is drying up, so the ship gets sunk on the back. Now you have this, and then you have inflation. This, you will actually need a model, not a generative AI, to look into these real time, and then give you a proper pricing or a logistics this thing. That when you feed to generative AI, it makes the decision. So again, if you see this, where I'm going is the supply chain shortage, which means, how do you, if you see, all the CIOs have only four things: keep growing, improve customer satisfaction, reduce bottom line. So now you have an option where the top line cannot grow. It is the bottom line, how you cut it. So generative AI in combination with your AI should look at these four factors. How do I reduce my costs? The cost of goods of sold, if I can't reduce, keep it same, because my revenue is not increasing. So this is how you have to tie it back, not get carried away that how much budget should I keep? Because 1 million to me means nothing, 10 million to you means nothing. But after your R&D and your fancy is done, it is becoming a part of your innovation projects, and maybe it could transfer from the third stream to keep the lights on bucket. Who knows? And again, these days all the SaaS vendors are saying we will give you AI. Maybe the business transformation project will also include AI, but then that would fall under the business transformation bucket. We always will have three streams. Not every company is luxury enough to have a third stream of innovation, but you either have a business transformation and keep the lights on. You will have to carve out a budget of it for these kind of experiments.
Yeah, I like the approach. I think it's critical for research and development departments. Specifically underneath the chief architect, it should be a group that tries out some of these solutions that are coming onto the market to see how they'll perform and actually help determine whether or not there is adequate data for your company to go after, rather than just have people in the business community go willy-nilly after it. Because they when they start the projects, they have no clue whether or not adequate data is
Exactly.
and you can build a research and development budget, and then if it looks like it's going to have really good return on investment, then you can use more mainstream budgeting to fund it.
Exactly.
And that way it's you get a better idea of what you're going to get for it. How do you think companies need to measure and achieve a positive return on investment for these projects?
Again, innovation projects, you don't have a positive investment, it's right off. So the positive ROI only comes when they become part of the business transformation projects. I think it's kind of self-evident that if it falls in the three buckets, Again, the second bucket is a very debatable one when you talk of keep the lights on. I was at the the Infotech conference, and this was a senior director, and he was very frustrated when I said keep the lights on. What do you mean keep the lights on? You are delivering value. You may not call it a positive value. He said try turning off your lights for 2 days and try to work without them. This is exactly what we have to tell the management. There is value being delivered. Yes, you are considering it as an OPEX, not as a capital. So we have to educate them. Again, these are financial terms of how we define a capital OPEX, because keep the lights on is always an operating expense. But what he argues is it's a positive operating experience, operating expense. Because if you don't have them, you don't have any business. Forget about your innovation. So that's how you educate them, saying that it's not just part of your business transformation. If I'm able to reduce my operational costs, that is a positive ROI too. We've done with RPA, we've done with hyper automation. This is also the next level. Generative AI by itself cannot generate positive ROI, but again, if you merge it with the normal AI, then you can start showing positive ROI.
How will AI enhance customer satisfaction and streamline processes, or both?
I think we discussed about that, Jack, right? The business process right now, companies use concept of BPM, and we don't need to go into the business process, but there's a classic example of process mining. What process mining does is it actually goes into the system and shows you a real time, like an MRI or CT scan of your business process. The business process, what it does is it shows you the nitty-gritty of how it is. Like, it's a very simple example. When you build a home, you have an architect who lays it as per your requirements, but over a period of time, you change the house so much that you forget the specs. So what the process mining actually does is it says, this is how you were supposed to build it, but this is the mess you made. Now, bear in mind, the language of how it shows is not easy to understand. You need a guy who understands process mining. What generative AI can do is, hey, tell me, why did my PO take 25 minutes? It can say, the standard path was it should just take 3 systems, but instead of going from SAP to Oracle to something, it took other route, and then hence it was a problem. So suddenly what generative AI can do is not only making the process simple, but it can help you explain. And then, hopefully it gives you the power saying, go and simplify my process and make sure it meets the audit requirements. So business process with process mining actually is a leap forward. And when you combine with generative AI, you are making the language of business process speak in the language of English. And I think thanks to ChatGPT 4.5, where you can speak, listen, and hear, it could immediately pop up and say, hey, Jack, we had a problem with the business process. Perhaps these are places where we could improve. And what do you want to do? And you say, go ahead. And then immediately it says, I will just approve this PO, and bam. So I think the art of infinite possibility is there. So business processes, when you improve, see, when you talk of a customer experience, one thing that I've been learning is every single click in the mind of a customer is a pain. So every simple click that is there is a step in a process. So every step in a process, if you knock out, you make the customer experience a lot better. But this is where a process improvement comes. But when you combine with generative AI, it's just telling, hey, Jack, you had 6 steps, step 1, step 2, step 3, here. Which one do you want me to knock off? So you just knock off the step 5, and now you suddenly have step 4, and it says by doing this, you are just 20% efficient. So again, I'm just putting my own thoughts. There are a million ways of how you can use generative AI to improve your business processes.
And so let's talk about risk. What potential risks, such as security breaches or legal compliance issues, should companies be aware of?
So we have to talk of 2 things: risk and compliance. Risk, we live in a world of 0 day. There is a potential 0 day attack that can occur. Generative AI, if I said, We are the simple examples of MGM and the simple example of Dallas downtown utilities department with generative AI. If you don't put the guardrails, it's multifold.
Oh, yeah.
You basically are opening every network socket and pocket available. If you do some of the tools like Nmap on your system, it'll show you all the ports. I'm just telling. Now, I knew the command. When you have generative I don't know. I'm just telling you're recording it, and you can ask it, define a threat model for me. Go on an offsec. Go on an offsec, and we are again inside the cybersecurity. We are in offsec mode and a defsec mode. Okay, maybe these vulnerabilities are there. How do you avoid this? I'm just making it up. So you could really go in an offsec mode and start attacking, creating a blitzkrieg. Are companies ready to do this? I don't know. Now, when we come from a compliance, this is very funny. I have a friend of mine who's legal, and he says traditionally, when you mean automation, it was the human rules were automated, which means we said 1 + 1 equals to 2, and 1 + 2 is equal to 3. Now, if AI were to infer and say 1 + 1 is equal to 2, and hence the logic is automation also AI? Because AI drives automation. AI is telling 1 + 1 is equal to 2, so click the button. But the rule was created by human. AI inferred the rule and hence click the rule. Now, fundamentally, does automation come under the laws of AI? If so, then it comes under the jurisprudence of legal. It's funny of how lawyers are talking and lawyers are using it. Now, because AI used it, the brain of it, remember the very early conversation that you and I had, the brain was developed not because of you and me, could be someone. So if a beautiful logic was written, who owns it? Can I claim on it? In fact, the US government, many senates are saying that if AI is used to create new ads or new marketing strategies, you cannot own it. Now, a business logic that was written by AI for you, can you own it? Because IP is not yours. So there are many unanswered questions which we don't know. And the only way we will know that is when the NIST is having an AI risk management framework. US is having, Europe is having. I think Europe by far is the far most mature one from a risk and legal compliance. Every country is coming. What it would mean is, I'm just taking an example. If the product was created in India and sold in US, technically who owns it? But again, this false is, why was it created in India? Where did it come from, its origins? So now you have to explain how did it come to this conclusion? You have to show the traceability, you have to show the lineage. This is where explainability comes. And where did it get content from before it made a decision? And if the content came from some old scriptures, foundation models, OpenAI actually didn't even take rights. They just scraped the data left and right. So if you have made a decision which is based on a scraped data, who owns it? Honestly, I'm not a compliance officer, but I know it is not an easy, straight answer to say yeah or nay. There are many answers, many questions, and hence what I recommend or what I am talking to people is, even if we do it, because let's say this comes back to your question, how do we guardrail it? If we take an open source model and the foundation model, we fine tune it, it may be a success for us. But if we have to do the explainability, and sadly the explainability comes back to something like an open source, who gets the credit? So many questions that are unanswered. I'm not an expert, by the way, Jack. I am also learning by the day, listening to all the experts on the world. The good thing is maybe there'll be some consensus saying, okay, as of this date, whatever is copied, we'll leave it. But after this, we will put guardrails and say this copyright belongs to me, this copyright belongs to you. What I also expect is the US jury, the US judge will have a lot of jobs for the next couple of years.
Yeah, yeah, I'm seeing, like they made that judgment here recently where a person created a painting, a pretty fabulous painting. They created it with AI, and the court's already deemed it as being something they can't put a trademark or copyright on. And that has far-reaching ramifications.
Exactly.
The other thing too, you were talking about security there for a little bit. I mean, I'm reasonably familiar with the ways people attack your system, but it's going to get a lot more advanced.
Jack, can we do in 20 minutes? Because I have to pick up my son.
Oh, sure. You want to pause? Yeah, hold on to
Yeah,
it.
let's pause on it. Let's pause on it.
Okay. So how easily can generative AI be integrated into organizations' current technology stack?
So basically, most of the companies today are talking of being cloud native. So by virtue of it, when you talk of cloud native, one of the things is being API driven, rather than exposing yourself. If the companies hopefully have an API strategy, that's where you start plugging them with the APIs. And this is where the modern enterprises are talking of being completely composable. That is, each line of business or each one can orchestrate based on their needs. So hopefully generative AI with an API strategy can fit into the composable enterprise. And that's where even the security domains comes. This is more like not going into deep. One of the things that we talk is mesh architecture. If companies embrace that, then generative AI could actually embed into the mesh architecture using APIs.
Cool. Okay. And any resource or changes required for that to be successful?
No, generative AI by itself would need resources, but to integrate with an enterprise, if they have an API strategy, it won't be a big task to integrate. The big task would be on training the teams, because the stakeholders are not just going to be a few, lot more. So it is not integration challenges, it is the people challenge, the cultural challenges that have to be addressed.
I got that. And so how are you employees and users going to be trained to interact with AI systems effectively? The saying that's out right now is AI is not going to take your job, but a person who knows how to use AI is going to take your job. And so, how are people going to be trained?
So the fact is, today we are already living in the smartphone era age, and everybody is using AI at varied levels. We may not notice that we don't explicitly call it, but we are all using it. It's taking him to the next level, and most of the companies already have AI embedded. If you're in a Salesforce or an Oracle or an SAP, they're already using AI. The beauty is this is not one more technology. It is a changing direction. So the companies can make their lives with proper user experience. Then if you really see how generative AI or AI drives impact is giving more value, and the value is delivered through a proper experience. So what we need is people need to be trained. Business need to find or need to understand that instead of 10 clicks, you're doing 1 click, or even forget that. If you take, let's step back a moment. So why ChatGPT become a revolution as compared to AI, the old AI? The models were there. Even now, if you see 2017 is where all that you need is attention, which was coined by Bert by Google. It was there, and it was nothing short of a revelation. Here also you are using deep neural networks, but what is significant, a leapfrog evolution, is the experience. And when I mean by experience, you have a chat window where you can start having a conversation. So it is a model that is conversing with you instead of a data scientist or somebody whom you're talking and getting the data. So This is what needs to happen. In fact, there's a new stream thanks to ChatGPT. Prompt engineering is what the business users need to be trained. So the business users will get very rich experiences. In fact, as I'm speaking to you, I didn't notice not Google, Microsoft gently pushed to desktops, I mean, personal laptops, Copilot. So, what needs to happen is the way we start our conversations will differ. We will focus more on prompt engineering, but what I'm even more um, kind of ridiculed is the prompt engineering. What kind of prompts to ask also will be prompted by itself. So, but again, if you see, it is the experience that is changing. I am hoping ERP systems, CRM systems, these systems of engagement, they will be fundamentally and radically different, in the sense not being very tough. Like when you get into Tesla, let me ask, you didn't have to train yourself. You already had a car and you just got into Tesla and you didn't have to do any difference. But Tesla is nothing but a shared love technology machine. Same thing will happen. Your experiences will be a lot more palatable and you will be able to interact and be much more productive faster.
Yeah, it's interesting. We don't use analog dials anymore. But everybody
Exactly.
knows how to use the technology in these advanced cars because they made it look like the old stuff. And they're mixing digital and analog looks, but it's still, people are very able to digest what the car's telling them.
Exactly. And now everybody is trying to become a technology company. In the past, people used to say we are an oil company or a logistics company, but now everybody says we are a technology company that delivers a value. If
Yeah.
you see the banking, we are a technology company that provides banking as a service. It is other way that used to be in the past. So now we're just changing the needles.
Well, so over the years, I've had so many friends that were CIOs tell me that their CEOs said to them, "We're not a technology company. We do this." But that's all changing because AI is going to have that kind of an impact. If you're not heady on technologies, you're going to get behind. You're going to get overwhelmed by your competitors.
It's disrupt or get disrupted. Which one you want to choose is your option.
Yeah, exactly right. Well, how can everybody's talking about bias? Bias in the data, bias in the algorithms. How can companies ensure that they're not getting biased in their algorithms and models?
Uh, I would say I don't have an answer, and the reason I would say is um, I keep blogging on LinkedIn, which I had a recent article where I was working with Bard, and Bard is a Google one, and Microsoft has Bing, which is powered by DALI. I asked Bing to generate an image of an enterprise architect as an entrepreneur. How does it feel to be? So, it had, a visionary map in front, and then it was a white man. I liked it. I didn't even think anything. By the way, you can see that on my LinkedIn article, and I said it's powered by DALI. Now, normally you don't think, but then I stepped back. Why a white man? Why not a black man? Why not a woman? Why not a kid? Why not? And it turns out now this is where traceability comes. We don't know how it got it, but if you see, majority of the enterprise architects were men. No offense. So we are constantly dangling on the fact of bias in data, but what we don't talk is the bias induced by humans into the data.
Oh yeah.
So that nobody talks. So honestly, when people are scared about the bias in the data or the drift in it, I'm laughing. If you take a missile, missile is of no good, but it is a person who triggers it on and directs it to be blown on another one. So it is the humans that are creating a bias for it. And speaking of that, uh, you know in AI in today's world is narrow AI. It is not the AGI. The general intelligence is not there.
It's all narrow.
The thing is, actually, they say, I saw recently Tesla building the humanoids, but what begets is culture is a big problem, and
It is.
AI understand culture. There's a saying, what is right in your culture is wrong in my culture, and vice versa. What is right in my culture might be wrong. The modalities of the culture are so narrow. I don't think AGI will be at a level to understand that to show the bias. So this example, classic example that I talked of, it generated a white man. I didn't even think for 2 minutes. Then when I thought, so how do you induce? Is it a bias, a data bias? Maybe. But was this data bias caused by AI? No, it was caused by humans.
Oh yeah.
So it's not an easy when people this is where they talk of overfitting and underfitting in an AI model. I get it, but bias is a very subjective thing, especially when it comes to generative AI. Now, sorry.
No problem.
So I will honestly, as long as the bias is not extreme, and if it is within the tolerance limits, I think it's okay. Otherwise, we should not fret too much about the bias. But yes, if there is a drift in the model, that is a big problem. Like the classic example where the model started deteriorating, the prime numbers, which had a high accuracy, started falling down. That's a problem. But from a bias, I think we humans have to go beyond technology and understand the human empathy. That is the biggest problem in the model bias.
I was reading an article about this the other day, and they were talking about bias can be so subtle and difficult to detect. And it used a simple example. If you're trying to teach machine learning algorithm to differentiate between animals, and you have 100 pictures of cats in the data, and you have 10 of dogs, almost every dog is going to be identified as a cat. And so
Exactly.
your data scientist, and I mean, a lot of companies, really big companies, they have a person who's just a specialist in data bias, and that person looks for things like that. Where you just have your sampling has such a greater degree of one particular factor that it's overwhelming the other factors, even though
That's why we call it overfitting. And again, we have to deal with the concept of overfitting and underfitting because, yes, to reduce the bias, they're talking of synthetic data, but AI, if suddenly you generate a picture out of it, and if it is not able to find from its database or see, at the core of AI is math, which
oh yeah.
so as the neurons get a higher and higher probability with less error, there is a higher accuracy. But if you start calculating what do you call it, it is the epochs and the errors in it, the more they start finding, then this is where I think, again, thanks to ChatGPT, where we're talking of reinforced learning with human feedback, because it's constantly learning from you rather than just making a prediction. And this is
Yeah.
what companies have to do, is as they embrace generative AI, they got to make sure they are deterministic in nature. AI cannot be non-deterministic in nature. But again, there's a fundamental problem that when you leave AI and when we talked about this bias, um, there's a little bit of story to this that I was actually talking to you or somebody in this. So let's say the AI makes a recommendation, a classic recommendation, uh, which is generative AI. You as human, you have the ability to make a decision, yeah or nay.
Mhm.
Now, we'll leave the traceability part of it, but when you make the decision and it sounds kind of logical and plausible, you make it. It turns out your decision has impacted the company. The
Yeah.
company has lost. Who is responsible for it?
That was going to be my next question to you. This is the difficulty of this, is that we're starting to use AI to generate real decision making for business. And I'm encouraging clients to utilize the output. Once you've got a model and it's performing better than a human, if you can get into the upper 90 percentiles on a lot of instances, that's far beyond what a human can do. And so there's no reason to not depend on the AI to actually make decisions for you. The issue is, how can that be auditable? How can it be transparent? How can you have
Exactly.
accountability in AI? Because if it makes a really crazy decision, you're going to have to figure out why that happened. That means you've got to have the data you use, you've got to have the model you used, and you got to be able to go in and look at it and figure out what caused it to do this. And that can be very difficult in a math model.
Exactly, and in spite of that, when you talk about this today, we have underwriters for risk insurance, just like your house. We have for cybersecurity too. But on a note, the risk for cybersecurity is actually increasing by tenfolds.
Yeah,
And
it's downright scary.
yeah, and in fact, some of the underwriters are not willing to take the liability with cybersecurity. Microsoft has taken leave and they said, if you are working with us, any potential lawsuit, we will step in. I think it's a very encouraging sign, because if you work with Microsoft on the Copilot and use it, if there's any lawsuit, this is what companies need to do. This is what companies need to declare with the stakeholders, that we have made a decision with help of AI. So the world needs to know now 3 things will happen. By doing that, you're bringing back trust into the company, because the stakeholders will actually believe. And second is, you have, who knows, you may have lawsuits and whatnot, but by working with the vendor, and this is something I hope the vendors will actually do, taking a leaf out of Microsoft. If enterprises use AI to make decisions, the contractual agreements that they have, hopefully the vendors work with them, because the next couple of years we will see unprecedented lawsuits.
Oh yeah.
Even though the vendor can fight back and say, the decision was made by you, but what will be of reassuring factor is, let's work together. I know it's a thin line, and the reason why I say that is, if you have worked with the big vendors like the Oracles and the SAPs, IBM, Broadridge, their EULAs are only meant to screw you. The way they write their EULAs, end user license agreements, and the way they buy these M&As are only to find that small hole today to sue you. It's not just A or B or C company. Every company does that. But then as we move into generative AI, and this is an area of caution that I'm going to give all of our viewers, if you don't understand your software today, especially like EULA, and you embrace generative AI, and if it crosses, because AI cannot live by itself, it needs the tenants, which is various components. Make sure your EULA is properly understood, because all it takes is one potential small mistake. And this is where vendors have to take a leaf from Microsoft and partner with the enterprise and say, you're making a decision for good with the power of technology. We are there to stand with you, and let's make sure we will help ourselves together. And this is where I think need to go. Openness comes in, and when we do that, the adaptability rate will be much faster.
Yeah, I agree.
Otherwise, couple of lawsuits, I'll tell you, we're talking of OpenAI now asking for more money. There are more lawsuits and more lawsuits. I'll tell you, all this hype in generative AI, if you get 5 to 10 massive lawsuits, trust me, generative AI winter comes.
Yeah.
It will come, and all the big gurus who are talking will shut up. These are the same gurus that talked when blockchain came, quantum came, metaverse came, digital twins came, and many, many else came, but they were never subject to lawsuits.
Yeah.
But this is going to have imminent repercussions, and I sincerely hope the vendors will step in, just like what Microsoft is telling. If you use our tool, and if there are lines that are blurry, we understand and we agree, we uphold you, and we will be with you. We will be far more successful.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Well, how do people need to think about the maintenance and updating of these models as they evolve? You know, obviously you've got drift. You know, as the data gets doubles. You know, I mean, like right now, data's doubling every year, pretty much everywhere. It's been doing that for a long time. So as the data, you know, uh, as the data evolves, how do you make sure that the your AI models can evolve with it? And in addition, you know, there'll be additional people will want the models to do more over time. Do you know what I mean? And you know, right now models are narrow, but how do you see it evolving?
It's just like how we've grown from toddlers to adults to old people.
I agree with that.
Human attention has gone to roughly 8 seconds, which means roughly around 500 pages worth of data. It's only going to quadruple or quintuple or whatever is the third going. What is going to happen is AI will get better with it. Um, Companies will start using it in various ways in new business models. So the data drift will come, but we will use AI for AI, which means as the model starts to drift, there will be another business model like a what is called as a generative adversarial network, where two models keep fighting, while this model A or B, you know, we use an ensemble, and I hope this will come. Ensemble is a combination of multiple business models. So while the ensemble keeps working, there'll be a GAN or adversarial model that's only job is to find the data drift, because, like you said, the scale and the magnitude of data that is coming in and the level of intelligence is going faster and faster. So when you get faster and faster, you can have poisoning of the model. The poisoning could actually induce a drift faster to
Oh
the
yeah,
left or right. So we will have another model. And when you use technology, you will always have to use technology for it, technology for the sake of technology. So
yeah.
what I call is AI for AI. You will use ultimately AI to actually fix this. Now, what is even going to happen is that AI model that is checking the core foundation model will also have to be monitored, because even that can get into a drift. So it is again, you know, this is where AI for AI. So we will have a model to monitor. We will have a monitor to give us decision. We will have a model to monitor the monitoring of it. So what we call as an observability. So the observability of models will continuously evolve. And the thing is, you know, the way the open source innovation is happening is there being models being raised. In fact, ChatGPT 4 is billions plus. So it's even more than billion plus. So it has the power of hard million. I don't think it has a power like what a human can do at the temperature of 34 degrees Celsius. It needs a lot more, but it's going to get better and bigger. But we will have model observability, which is kind of sorry, which will help detect the drift as well. So it's AI for AI, point blank.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. Um, so what key performance indicators do you think should be used to evaluate generative AI? You know, it's interesting, you know, because I'm, you know, one of the things we didn't do up front here is really explain generative AI, you know, and it's basically using AI to generate text, pictures, voice, video, things like that, and it's incredibly good at it. I mean, it's amazing how, you know, people can use AI to make you look like you're doing something you never did, you know, and you know so how do we, you know, what type of KPIs need to be in place to monitor that type of AI? I mean, it's tricky, you know?
Um, your business KPIs still hold valid for AI, generative AI too, but your operational KPIs could fundamentally differ. And when I mean by that, when I'm so the business KPIs are again things like NPS, CSAT. You know, there are fewer metrics like number of clicks, time to resolution of an order. Those kind of things could still be, they are still valid. Like I said, you know, we were using, let's say, to troubleshoot an issue like the tire issue. It used to previously take you a couple of months, but with generative AI, it now we have a completely user different experience where a user just converses through chatbot, and chatbot still existed, but then after some point, chatbot, you have to get it off it and make a phone call. In this case, it's so deep and immersive. It's reducing your KPI from days, weeks to minutes. That's a business KPI. But from a systems KPI, you have to still follow the system models. Like, what you're following your KPIs for your model operationability, and what we call as the observability. It is, how many batches are you training on? How long does the processing take? What is the drift of it? What is the return? What is the error rate in it? How much is the probability? I think those, maybe we might have new KPIs, but the functional or the business KPIs don't change. The technical KPIs might change quite a bit.
That makes sense. And so how can companies determine if their competitors are implementing and using generative AI, and and determine whether or not what they're doing is a threat?
I think generative AI is here to stay with us and probably give a newer business model. The companies, the era that we live in is do or die, disrupt or get disrupted. It's not about the competitor, it's about the person who gets the pie first. But before who gets the pie first, we'll have to make sure he's got everything covered in a row. Again, this is where I keep coming back, Jack, is a tri-modal strategy. Embrace the generative AI with the reality that you will have pitfalls down the journey, but also make sure the systems of record and systems of engagement have equal weightage in it. If you lose sight of it, generative AI by itself cannot live. So there is still some time, especially from the lineage, from the governance and everything, security. So embrace the tri-modal strategy, and a year from now or 2 years from now, the AI will become, generative AI will become a thing of the past. Maybe it will be AI plus quantum. You and I will be talking about AI and quantum. But yeah, tri-modal strategy is the only way to move forward.
Yeah, 2 months ago, this girl asked me, well, what's the next big thing? And I said, well, right at the moment, the current big thing is large language models. And
Exactly.
2 months later, all the feeds I'm getting off Twitter, are about generative AI. And so I think you're right on. We don't really know where this is going to head because we don't know how big it's going to get. We don't know what all the possibilities are. It's a very quickly evolving industry and
Exactly.
and technology. So what other emerging trends do you see that are coming up?
Trends in generative AI or other trends?
No, just trends in AI.
No, generative AI is definitely the talk of the town.
It is right now.
Yeah, but what people are experimenting or exploring is how to embed tiny models, not large language models, MLM, SLM, those kind of models into enterprise. Because foundational model is the core of an LLM, but the foundation model, when you take that back to an enterprise, it doesn't work. And you don't need billion plus parameters. So we used to call it tiny ML. That is no more the tiny ML. So these smaller and medium large language models people are looking at it, which don't need GPUs. One of the things that we didn't talk about, Jack, is the cost of running these.
Oh yeah.
And the thing is the sustainability. When we talk, how much does it cost? How much of carbon do we burn? While there's all hype. In fact, there was an article from the data center that data centers will soon run out because they don't have enough GPU and enough compute. Now, I think one of the model is how do we make data centers faster, better? Again, to suit this need. So all these offsets are coming because so far we always anticipated AI, but now with generative AI, every business is having to rethink it. I didn't realize that data centers are now increasingly worried about the scale of generative AI consuming them. So they are trying to find ways not to create, but cool, because generative AI, when it computes, generates a lot of heat. Now, what you have to understand is it is water. So they have something called dry cooling, something, sorry, I don't remember what it is. So people are actually thinking, how can we create data sensors that will cool faster with less power and give the same one. So again, it's the way you look at it. If you look at biology, it is actually unraveling proteins at much faster rate. People are using it different ways, but again, I think quantum suddenly slowed down, but I'm sure it'll come back in the next wave when generative AI slows down.
Oh yeah, and I think you're really onto something. I did a podcast here recently with a guy named Ron Dagdag here in town. He works at 7-Eleven, and he was displaying how to use tiny models. And I couldn't believe that on this little tiny device that he was actually getting not a machine learning algorithm to run, a deep learning algorithm to run. I was watching it run, and I think there's incredible potential for that, because if we're ever going to get to general AI, there's going to be a whole lot of tiny, I guess what I'm saying is that historically we've all believed that you had to have these volumes of data to run an AI model, and it's proving to not be true. With these tiny ML applications, you can do things on the edge of the enterprise that I think we never dreamed possible with AI, just because of the data. Just getting it down to the device at the edge of the enterprise and get back. But these new models, they can do it.
Exactly. Yep.
Less data. Well, so how should companies communicate the benefits and impacts of generative AI to customers, employees, investors, board of directors? What are the things that those people need to be told about what the company's doing and what it's getting out
of it? Again, generate small ones. Every new technology that you embrace, of course, these are leapfrog technologies. We did talk about how to get to the stakeholder and communicate. Make sure we celebrate the small one and start gradually rolling it out team by team, because it's so nascent in its stage. Yes. We just don't know. Even after you celebrate the success, it could have a drift that none of your models, most of the companies' security technologies are not able to detect it. So, you may be able to celebrate your small success, but it needs to be guarded success. So as you roll out, you may have to start thinking about the zero threat, because like I said, the phishing attacks are so sophisticated. Remember we talked about MGM attack in Dallas, this one. Without generative itself, they've created so much of upper veil. Imagine how generative AI can. So it's not, even if you see success, which is great, but don't jump the cliff and start going gung-ho or big guns on it. It needs at least a couple of months. And once you're comfortable, then only start taking big scale. And that's why this one, while there is the hype and whatnot hoopla, it needs guarded, cautious optimism. No better word than saying that, because even a year from now, who knows? Who knows? The threat actors can actually, the threat actors now with generative AI is your surface attacks are even more. It's like a virus, like how the COVID virus was trying to attack a cell. Your surface, every time a hole on your enterprise, you can have a DDoS attack or a surface, some kind of an attack. It just increases by 10x or 20x. And companies need to equally invest into cybersecurity as they roll out.
Well, I agree. You think about in the old days when people first started attacking your networks, they would write algorithms that would attack and attack and attack. And what it was really doing is just trying different things. But now you can write a machine learning algorithm that's actually learning from every attack that it does, and that's
exactly,
that gets a lot scarier.
It will get scarier, and we're all in SaaS. If you see the cloud, the SaaS provider says, I take care security of the cloud, not in the cloud. So it's the same thing that's going to happen. So generative AI model will say of the model, not in the model, because in the model, data is provided by you. So this is where model observability comes. And again, a culture thing, you need to educate now, never before, that guys, we are in a path of journey. and this journey could cause a lot of upheavals. Let's be prepared. I think if the CEO is aligned with the teams and with the stakeholders, we are up for a bright future, Jack. Always, technology is never, I don't know why people say that we'll lose jobs or whatnot. Look at our shop floors. Now they're all literally run by bots. And aren't we having jobs? We are having different kind of jobs. So what I'm thinking is, it will create new jobs which we haven't thought about.
That's exactly. Every technology iteration that we've done, I mean, humans are incredibly adaptive. And
Exactly.
and I mean, I can go all the way back to when I first got involved in technology in the mid '70s, and all along the way, everybody was shaking the concern stick that, oh my God, we're going to eliminate everybody's job. But it hadn't worked out that way, and I don't think it's going to for a long time. I mean, until you have androids that are like Data on Star Trek, people are
Exactly.
still going to work. I mean, if you had a whole army of those things, could they take everybody's jobs? Yeah, but we're years away from that. And even when that
Exactly.
happens, I think AI is going to always augment humans, but I also think as we get further into the future, that humans are also going to augment AI, and it's going to be a symbiotic relationship forever.
Exactly. And it's just, the good thing is the models, as they're racing for hunger. I think I read Anthropic now can take up to 4 billion parameters. Again, this comes back to the factor of VUCA, the left side of the VUCA, not the right side of VUCA.
Yeah.
It is even going to go even more volatile. And with AI, we can fathom this and create new business models to create the right side of the VUCA. While there be volatility, the leaders in their mind who are calm can create an absolute vision. Vision is all that you need to drive, and a clear, and empathy. Okay, guys, this is a journey. So this is where vision, understanding, compassion, and agility come. How fast you move from from confusion to agility, and how fast it's in your mind will drive this. So the VUCA to a VUCA, I just created the term a couple of years back for myself. I mean,
Yeah, I
VUCA
like
already
that.
existed, but this VUCA is only going to get better for companies who take technology to the next level. That obviously the companies that don't take will still be in the left side of VUCA.
Agreed. One of the things I'm reading a lot about is the effect of AI on sustainability and environmental goals. And, it uses a lot of energy. I mean, running a big AI model, boy, it's a machine hog. I mean,
It
you
is
use
a hard.
a lot of cycles. And, I think we're going to have to find ways to, reduce the energy consumption and minimize the environmental impact. You got any ideas on how that can be done?
I don't know, but all I can say is AI for AI. Maybe it would become smart. Right now, if you ask any of the cloud provider how much carbon footprint their machines cost, I don't think there's a straight answer.
There's
Uh,
not.
yeah, well, they're coming up. I think I did see something on carbon credit. So every time you have an infrastructure, and now companies are being forced to report under the Inflation Reduction Act, maybe AI will come and say, you know what, use this to reduce the carbon footprint. So again, it's AI for AI that would be used. But what would be equally good is, I think, again, like I said, in the data center, they're trying to see ways to cool it down. So
Yeah.
not only the computational cost will go down. Now, if you see, we went to billion parameters now to 4 billion, and probably will go to even 10 billion or petabyte scale this one. AI could tell that run at this time or run these parameters at this core. All the machine CPUs and GPUs are hyper-threaded, so it might even recommend that we will run these in hyper-threaded configuration. I'm just making it up, who knows? We will, as technology evolves, we will do, but at the moment, generative AI sadly is a carbon hog. It
It
is
is.
not at all environment friendly.
Yeah,
We,
yeah.
we
It's just
are burning faster. We are burning faster.
yeah, you're processing a lot of data, and when you're processing a lot of data, you run a lot of machine cycles. So
I hope um, the companies that are investing the billions and billions actually invest on the sustainability of an AI model too. Saying, we will run, instead of running 10 billion parameters, run 4 billion parameters, but at 25% of the carbon footprint of what a billion parameters is. I think that is where companies have to be. But right now, what I'm seeing is a rat race of how many parameters we can adopt and how fast we can. Nobody is talking about, or I wouldn't say that, not many people are talking about the carbon footprint it is creating, the massive carbon footprint. And sadly, what we're all forgetting is global warming is occurring faster. And if you've been traveling quite a bit, the turbulences are way too much than it has been in the past. Yeah, so I'm just telling you, this is just an indication of how we are. And here we are in Texas, you and I, for the first time in my 2 decades, I'm seeing a triple digit in fall. We haven't seen the temperature, and now they're talking of a polar vortex. So I think this is where we need all this technology needs to have a sustainable angle for us, for our future as well.
Well, I hope we start to use AI to help us figure that out, because it's like AI is our best chance at understanding weather and the weather patterns.
Exactly.
And with AI, we can probably figure. I'm about to do another podcast tomorrow. I'm going to do one on AI in the utility sector. And
Awesome.
yeah, and so they're already starting to use AI in the utility industry to help better manage the grid, because it's getting big and complex, and it's very difficult for humans to understand the ramifications. But if these data centers are growing like a weed, which we know they are, to house AI and using massive amounts of electricity, there has to be some over model that's looking at all of that. And right now, we're not getting all the data into that model. Those models exist, but they're sensing usage. They're not understanding what's coming, and a lot of them more electric cars and a lot more data centers using massive amounts of electricity. They're going to have an impact, no question.
No question. So yeah, what we need is AI for mankind, AI for AI to improve the mankind.
Exactly right.
Who knows? We will use AI. And actually, a fun fact, Jack, I don't know if you know, India actually recently landed their rocket, one of the landers on moon. They used AI. It was autonomous landing, because communicating from moon to the satellites in India was roughly 1.5 minutes. So what they had to do is, and I don't know if you know, it was supposed to land in one spot. It drifted a couple of meters because, to see that the surface was even, and it landed. So the prior launch to this launch, they used the concept of digital twin and AI. So the cameras were reading the temperature, the surface, everything, and based on that, the system made a decision. So this is making AI is making us better for mankind. So someday, of course, there were wonderful observations that it made, but what it is going to do is, how do we do the terraforming of planets? And this, AI, our Earth someday will blow out with population, with the kind of mess that is there. Maybe we will use to go and colonize, terraform another planet like Mars, which Musk keeps dreaming, and it has to be AI.
So I hope that this podcast helped everyone understand how chief enterprise architects approach innovation and AI in general, and specifically generative AI. We talked about that a lot. Key things that I think takeaways from this is, the things that are smart to do: build a strategy plan that links your business objectives with your technology objectives. Clearly identify required data, clarify the expected benefits the company will gain for generative AI, and determine how the ROI for these initiatives is going to pan out. And then understand how a specific AI initiative will impact the customer experience, what the risks are related to these projects, and how to mitigate the risks and measure success. So I want to thank you for doing this today, for taking the time. I know you're busy as Mad Hatter right now, but I think this provided a lot of good insights to people that are starting to look at this And you know, for me, you know, I'm a big. I came from big companies as a CIO, you know, and the enterprise architect today is shaping up to be the guy that's going to allow you to succeed or fail in these missions you're after in the AI space. And man, I mean, it was very valuable to me to have the opportunity to talk to you today. And I'm sure people watching this podcast are going to appreciate it. So thanks so much.
Thanks, Jack. It's always a pleasure talking to you. And let's catch up again.
Okay, well, listen, I want to thank everybody out there for watching the podcast. Our next podcast, which I already threw this out there, is going to be on AI and utility industry. So see you next time on AI Practical Applications.
Bye, Jack.
Take care.